Good morning. Welcome to the Rand Club. The Rand Club is almost as old as Johannesburg itself. The gold rush of June 1884 triggered a massive influx of gold diggers into this area. Of course, today gold diggers has a different meaning. The city was founded in 1886, and the club itself was established a year later. This after Cecil John Rhodes strolled through what was then Marshall's Township. He stopped right here at the intersection of Loveday and Commissioner and declared, "This place will do well for a club." Well, actually, I believe Rhodes had a high-pitched voice, but I digress. But this is a symbolic choice for us gathered here today. This place was built from the riches of what became and still is Africa's financial capital. The Anglo-Boer War, or the South African War, as some of us still refer to it, ripped the fabric of this country apart and in fact gave rise to a lot of the technology and methodology that would then feature strongly in the First World War. But at the end of that devastation, this club stood as a symbol of British triumph. And most of us gathered here today would not have been allowed through these doors other than as hired help if we were blacks, Jews, coolies, etc. And yet today, as one ascends the staircase of the Rand Club into this room, the armory, where firearms of the era still festoon the walls, it is a portrait of Nelson Mandela which greets us, while the Queen of England's picture looks on from the sidelines to where she's been relegated. And my car, parked outside, bears a Rand Club membership decal on the windshield. This should be a triumphant moment, symbolizing the end of colonialism and apartheid, and that all of us are gathered here today do so as equals in a prosperous land. But that's not the case. Today we gather in and out of darkness. There is a generator on the balcony outside burning diesel so that we may continue this gathering as planned in the event of threatened load shedding taking place. On a Sunday morning, when the city and its businesses lie dormant, with reduced demand on the grid, we will have no electricity. The absence of electricity that brings our economy to a grinding halt almost every single day is the most visible manifestation of a country that is now a failed state. And the reason why we have reached this point is that we are all victims of crime. All of us in this wonderful nation, we are victims of crime. But the crime I speak of is not the crime of Marikana. It is not the crime of Life Esedimeni, or the crime of Nkandla, or the crime of state capture. This crime is of a most insidious nature because we are not aware it is taking place. Every one of us in this country, we pay taxes. One way or another, we pay taxes. For almost all of us, this comes in the form of VAT, value-added tax. It comes in the form of fuel levies, of motor vehicle licensing fees, of road tolls. In addition, our companies pay corporate taxes, and the single biggest contribution to our tax base comes from the middle class. Every person who earns 6,500 a month or more. And here is the crime. For every 100 Rand that we contribute, the government spends 34 Rand paying themselves. Remember the days when you used to go to school in the morning and the school bullies would be lined up to steal some of your pocket money every single day? That's exactly what happens to us now. 34 Rand out of every 100 Rand we taxpayers contribute goes to the public service wage bill. Now, I suspect that many of us would have no problem paying 34 Rand out of 100 Rand if we had hospitals that worked without killing babies through infection, if we had police who can defend us instead of needing to pay ADT to protect themselves, if we had preservation of our water supply instead of sewage flowing to the Vaal Dam, if we have public transport systems to allow us to get to and from work safely and quickly so that we may spend time with our families instead of 4 hours a day or more commuting, with most of our income spent on transport. But none of these things work. And they're never going to work if we continue going down this path. And this is all our fault. Our best and our brightest with top-class marks They leave school and they go on to become doctors, engineers, scientists who can hold their own with the best of the world. The next year become MBAs, CEOs, lawyers, chartered accountants, and academics. We have artisans, we have mine workers, construction workers, auto workers, all who do real things on a daily basis with real skills. Even gardeners know which plants need shade and which need sun. Even domestic workers know the intricacies of operating really complicated machinery like Korean dishwashers and microwave ovens. But who do we send to Parliament? Ask yourself, of the 400 people we elect to the National Assembly every 5 years, how many of them are able to quit Parliament tomorrow and get jobs in the private sector, which would pay them as much as they currently earn? We pay 400 people more than R1 million per year per person, and they are largely unemployable. They have never created a business, but they want to tell us how to run businesses. They have never created a single job, but they want to interfere with how we create jobs. These are people who do not know how to change a tire, but they want to spend our money on an airline that most of us will never fly. These are people who insist that a working mother taking home 5,000 rand a month must pay her caregiver 2,000 rand per month as a minimum wage. They send their kids to private schools, but they spend our money on schools where teachers cannot read, write, or count, where teachers impregnate pupils, and no one gets convicted for statutory rape. And schools where 5-year-olds die in the most terrifying manner possible, literally drowning in shit. It was this old. And when I look at this picture, I see my children with their lives ahead of them, cut short by the collective incompetence of the 400 people we have sent to Parliament. And I realized then that it's time to put an end to the tyranny of incompetence. We need to fix this. And the only way to fix this is for those of us who actually know how to make things work to stand up and say, get out of the way, we've got this. It's harder than one would think. It's easy to persuade incompetent people to come on board in exchange for the possibility of a large salary. But competent people, strangely enough, are not driven by money. They are driven by passion for their vocation, and the monetary reward that follows is a consequence of that passion. It's not the reason. How does one persuade a brilliant young scientist filing patents for groundbreaking technology to give up her career and pursue politics? Or a lawyer in Johannesburg to give up time with his partner and children to commute to Cape Town? So we needed to find people who are able to commit themselves to national service without sacrificing their passion at the same time. My first discussion was with Roman Kabanak, sitting to my right, and I met the following day with Neo Kwaho. Roman is a legal consultant who works independently, and Neo is a serial entrepreneur, which leaves them both with time to devote to our project. Our task was to find people who know how to make things work and to recruit them to our cause. But who are these people who know how to make things work? There's a collective noun for us. We are capitalists. South Africa is a capitalist country. The street vendor is a capitalist. The spaza shop owner is a capitalist. The minibus taxi driver is a capitalist. The factory owner is a capitalist. The farm owner is a capitalist. The mining boss is a capitalist. The woman who sets up a creche in a traffic island in Alexandra Township is a capitalist. And all of us as capitalists come together to create jobs and prosperity for all of us. Capitalism has unleashed the biggest wave of prosperity in the history of the human race. By embracing capitalism, the people of South Korea are 17 times wealthier than the people of North Korea. And they are on average 15 centimeters taller than the people of the North because of better nutrition, because they're able to afford better food. By embracing capitalism, Russia will shortly overtake the US. Excuse me, the UK. Freudian slip there, Mr. Trump. By embracing capitalism, Russia will shortly overtake the UK in the size of its economy. By unleashing capitalism on its economy, China is every single month, without exception, uplifting 1 million people out of poverty every single month. But here, in South Africa, politicians have turned capitalism into a swear word. They make us feel guilty for working hard to improve our lives. And this guilt allows them to steal money from hardworking families and use the money for corruption. We are turning that around. We are saying that if you are a taxpayer, or if you employ someone and pay them, or if you provide a service which someone pays you for, you are a capitalist. And you should be proud of what you do to grow our country. And so, what better name for a political party than to use the name that they have hurled at us as an insult year after year? And what of our symbol? Cattle are the most visible symbol of wealth for all of sub-Saharan Africa. Purple is the color of prosperity. And in the words of Seth Godin, the only way to cut the hyperclutter of products and advertising today is to innovate something new, unique, remarkable, like a purple cow. And so, my fellow South Africans, I'm proud to introduce you to the Capitalist Party of South Africa, ZACP. I'm now going to introduce my colleagues. First, Roman Kabanak. Roman is a legal consultant and co-host of South Africa's most downloaded podcast, The Renegade Report, which discusses politics, global affairs, and political ideology. He has a keen interest in political strategy and messaging, with the express focus on property rights, freedom of speech, and the deepening of democracy. Neo Kwaho, to his right. After qualifying as a software engineer and developer at the Tshwane University of Technology, he has been a successful serial entrepreneur as founder and managing director of Lechao IT Consulting, as well as YDiddy, which is youth development through investigation and dissemination of information. He is known for his fourth industrial work program aimed at tech-curious and inclined youth intent on building and fulfilling sustainable careers in this space. Gideon Hubert, trustee, is joining us by YouTube from Cape Town. Holds a degree in economics from the University of South Africa and is an airline captain by profession. He has been involved in the South African firearm ownership debate since 2014, and he sees the issue as an inseparable component of civil rights in general. He's owner and editor of Paratus, a firearm ownership and information website. Unathi Kwaza also joins us from Cape Town. After studying for a higher diploma in food technology at Cape Peninsula University of Technology and working for a time in the food industry in quality control and quality assurance, she started her own business in 2008 in direct sales and marketing. She assisted a non-profit group called INENG, the Independent Entrepreneurs Group, working with small business owners, looking at government policies that create unwanted red tape for SMEs. She's currently a businesswoman based in Khayelitsha, Cape Town, and she's a board member of the Free Market Foundation. Duncan McLeod, founder and editor of the South African technology website Tech Central. He's a former technology editor of the Financial Mail. McLeod has won numerous awards for his writing. He's a classical liberal who believes that individual liberty and the market economy are key to resolving South Africa's challenges. Sindile Vabaza also joins us from Cape Town. He's an aspiring economist with a BA in Communications and Psychology through UNISA. He founded a tech company called Hand to Hand Applications, and he's also a freelance writer. Louis Nell joins us from Durban. He's consumer champion at Louis Nell Blog. He's a Node.js developer and blockchain enthusiast. He works with consumer-related issues and how technology will disrupt industries by disintermediating traditional middlemen. Katlego Mabusela, we call him affectionately KG. He's an entrepreneur, businessman, and life coach. Professional speaker, radio presenter, and author. Over 10 years entrepreneurial and personal development expertise. He has shared these insights with audiences for blue chip companies, including AXA, ABSA Capital, CEDA, and HP. And Dumo Denga. He has a master's in business science, founder of the Man Patria podcast, and a firm believer in free markets and free speech. So there are 10 of us. Oh, actually, we could go on to the next one, please. Thank you. And I just thought I'd put this up there just for the heck of it, because this was me 20 years ago. Because this man had a vision where he believed in a rainbow nation where all of us would be treated as equals, and I still do that. There are 10 of us, and you look at those pictures and you may ask, what do we have in common? What we have are 10 core principles that bind us together. And so please welcome to the stage Neo Kwaho to talk about these. Neo.
Thank you so much, Kenthan. Appreciate it so much. Ladies and gentlemen, as Kenthan has already introduced me, I am Neo Kwaho. Can you imagine how difficult and how daunting it was to have to look my parents in the eyes and say, the party that you have raised me in is no longer the home that I believe can make sure that the kids that I bear, that I raise in this country, will be safe, will grow up to have a fair chance at pursuing whatever dream that they have. I come from a very strong family of individuals who have sacrificed so much for what we call today the democratic South Africa. And to look them in the eye and have to tell them that this is where I am going and this is how I want to contribute to my country that I love so much. It was the most difficult thing to do. But to my surprise, they turned around and they said, every season has its leaders, has its heroes, has its people who will for that season fight for a better day. This is your season. You've got a legion of young people who have believed in you, who have followed you for the last 10 years. When you quit your job as a senior software analyst 10 years ago for no pay, for something that you believed in, and none of us understood why you would quit a life that was set when you have worked so hard just to get through tertiary, like every other black young person in this country. And then you would leave all that behind you because you have seen a couple of young people who could use with a bit of guidance, who could use with a bit of direction. We don't understand it, but we support you anyway. And those were the first people. My mother and my father were the first people to say, we are leaving what we predominantly or we have come accustomed to calling home for a better home, for a new home. So I just needed to share with you. Because it is not easy, and it is not going to be easy for any black person to leave a place they've called home for such a long time. So, number one, I feel and I know the emotion behind making a decision to go to a better place. We are all South Africans. I am a South African. And I want to live in a country that works. I've got young brothers, sisters, cousins, and so forth. My life, the last 10 years of my life has been dedicated to youth. I've got so many people that can attest to that. And I have honest conversations with them. And the first thing that they will tell you, we don't care about politics. We care about the fact that we want a country that works. A country that will allow me to pursue whatever dream, ambition, and goal I have, without any bureaucracy, without any hindrances that can easily be solved. And when Kanthan got in touch with me, and I'll tell you something, I've known Kanthan for a good, actually 10 years. So he has seen me pursue this dream of assisting every young person with opportunities, however way that I can help them develop their lives. And he used to tease and say, hey, why don't you start a political party? I'm not a politician. And even when he approached me recently, and when I say recently, I mean, hey, last year, really. Early last year. And he said, Neo, I've always teased you about 1, 2, 3. Do you not think that it is time? And I've toyed with the idea. But the biggest challenge to me has been, I know what is going to happen. I'm going to be branded all sorts of names. But nonetheless, I just had a daughter recently, actually on Sunday. And when I looked into her eyes, and I said, I don't care what anybody says. I'm going to build and I'm going to create the best possible opportunities for you and every other child out there. So more than anything else, this thing of creating a really better future than the one I found is no longer something that is sitting out there. It is something that is in my home. It is no longer a desire. It is an obligation. It is a need. It is what I live for. And on my dying bed, if all I say to my daughter is, I have contributed towards a country that will make sure that whatever dream you have, no unreasonable condition stands in the way of you fulfilling it. So, as a citizen, I've never really been fond of politicians. Because they are politicians, really. I've been fond more of entrepreneurs because in their nature they are problem solvers. I've been fond more of professionals because in the conversations that I've had about where this country should go, they've given me the most sense. And I've been fond of the ordinary man on the street that has given me more logic around how we can fix our country than any other politician I've sat with. And I thought, absolutely, Kanthan, let us do this. I'm on board. I'm 100%. And it will take ordinary citizens like you and I to fix this country. Yes, much has been done. Much could have been done. And now we are ushering in a new way of approaching the challenges that we have. Now, the most important thing was the opportunity where I could contribute on principles that I hold very dear to me. And we went on to look at these principles. We have 10 simple principles. It is not as complex as it is made out to seem. And already on the screen, you can already see. If you can see the screen, but if you can't, I'll read them out to you. Core things: liberty, equality, freedom of expression, private property rights, rule of law, right to work, safety and security, free markets, firearms, fraternity. Yes, I know maybe firearms may seem, what? Do we want to have in America? We'll get into that, but allow me, if you may. Liberty is the primary political value of our country. We all have lots of different values. There'll never be a time where you and I, or you with any other individual, even with your spouse, will agree 100% on everything. But here are the common things. We care about our family. Most of us are religious, and we belong to religious institutions, temples, mosques, churches, synagogues. But when it comes to what to do politically, what should the government be doing? And we should be asking actually just one question. What is that question? Does this increase or does it reduce the freedom of the individual? Put yourself in those shoes. I see what the government is proposing and what the government is about to do. That is, does it increase my freedom or does it decrease my freedom? Simple question. Put yourself in those shoes. Government should only act to prevent harm to others. Really. You know, there are times when I have said to a lot of young people, I do not think it is the job of government to create jobs. However, I do believe that it is the job of government to create an environment that allows you to create businesses that will in turn create jobs, to create environments that support and accelerate those kind of solutions. But how can you do that when your liberty is being infringed upon? So that's one. Equality, individual rights before group rights. You know, when we discussed it, I think at some point I had quite a bit of a challenge. I said, but really, isn't that a bit selfish? Individual rights over group rights? But however, when I went back and I sat and I reflected upon this, is it fair if a group of individuals, say maybe about 10, they come over to my house and they say, because you believe in the following, we have decided as a group that you should die. Then their group rights, if it is law, if it is the order of the day, then supersede my individual rights, isn't it? Then that would mean that I should lose my life. And they would be well within their rights. So, as simple as that, I looked at it and I said, but group rights emanate from individual rights. As an individual, I need to know that I am protected. And I have at least the basic rights that would ensure my safety and the safety of my loved ones. The individual is more important than the collective. We must not sacrifice the interest of the individuals for the common good. Every individual matters. Every individual is worthy of respect. Every individual is equal before the law. And I can go on and on about this, but I'd like to remind you of a book called Animal Farm, because for the longest time I've been feeling like I'm a character in Animal Farm. And one of the most poignant or memorable phrases was, "We are all equal, but others are more equal than others." And for the longest time, I've been feeling like that. Just the other day, I was telling a young person that we are going to have to work very hard because you and I don't have the right surname. We have the right skin, but we don't have the right surname. That is my reality as a black South African. Young, trying to make something. Not only for myself, for my family, and my community. If I had, or I felt I had, some semblance of being equal to whomever has the right surname today, I don't think I would have uttered those words to that young person. Tolerance and absolute protection of freedom of expression. Look, tolerance means one should not interfere with things of which one disapproves. Honestly, the best that you can do in that situation is to ask. To be educated is to ask, how does this work? Is to acknowledge that I lack understanding in this subject. Tolerance begins with freedom of expression, which means freedom of thought, speech, religion, and media. A society cannot develop unless every citizen has the right to express any opinion, even if other citizens find such views to be offensive. I've been a victim of this. I think every South African has been a victim of this, where you hold back your tongue. But the thought process that has gone into getting to that point where you have an idea that you'd like to express or a thought you'd like to express has not been a split-second thought. You've actually taken the time to look at this, to think about it, and so forth. But unfortunately, you know you're going to be chastised. You know that you'll be put up on a stake and bent, so to say. The society cannot develop unless every citizen has the right to express any opinion. That is so important to me. You know, just the other day, not too long, I was saying that, you know, when democracy came and we enacted the laws that we enacted around racism, around apartheid, and redressing the injustices of the past, it is not as if, however way the oppressor was indoctrinated to behave, also immediately just left them. Both black people and white people and every other race in this country was victims of a system. I do not suppose any other time any person who believes themselves to be liberal can stand up one day, all of a sudden, without warning, and say, I am racist. I don't think so. However, how do you know when you are being racist? Yes, there's the obvious ones, right? There's the obvious ones. But how do you know when you're offending a black person and a black person is taking it as racism? And these are the kind of discussions we need to have. That's why it is important for us to speak so that we can be able to educate each other to a point where we redress these issues. We address them and we say, this is how you can treat me better. You were taught in this particular manner. And then, without spending too much time there, private property rights protected by law. I look at you, Ramon. Because in all discussions that we've had, this is the one principle that you've always stood up to and said, this is very, very important. And hearing of a father that is about to lose his freedom and is about to go to jail because he shot an intruder that came into his yard has to be one of the most heartbreaking things. And I'll go about, just to elaborate a little bit better, but I think it would be more of a justice if you unpacked it totally the same way you were able to show me how important this matter is. The difference between prosperity and poverty, to tell you the truth, is property. Nations prosper when private property rights are well defined and enforced. And this is why the people of South Korea, as Kanthan mentioned, almost 17 times wealthier than the people of North Korea. I will not mention the centimeters and the heights and so forth. I mean, you can see my height. It's a very touchy subject I'm still dealing with. The state has the right to expropriate property. Do you understand what I mean? I'm saying the state, South Africa, has the right to expropriate property in the public interest. For example, to build dams or freeways or railways. But such expropriation should be based on fair market value decided by the courts. That is my take. So, I know it is a very contentious subject at the moment. But imagine you sitting right now in your house, whether millions or not as affluent, maybe somewhere go Soweto, which is where I grew up. Somebody comes in and says, the community needs this house. We have a bigger cause to fight. So you must vacate this house so that we can put together this cause. And I use such simplistic and ridiculous examples so that we can actually really see exactly just how far we could go if we set the wrong kind of tone today. Rule of law. The state cannot do whatever it wants to do when it wants to. And this takes me back to the whole issue around equality. I've always felt, personally, that there's a lot of things I cannot get away with in this country. But I know a few people in the state who run the state can get away with. And, you know, it's the whole thing. We are all equal, but others are more equal than others. The rule of law has to apply to everyone. And this is one of our principles. Right to work. Personally, I could have, in my own company, I could have taken quite a few young people who were looking for experience or who were saying, I don't have anything. I really don't have anything. And I live around the corner from your office. Really, that amount of money that you say you can afford to give me will go a long way in changing my life. It will go a long way in helping me feed my family. However, I've had to look at the law, wherein the law says no, but this is the minimum that you must give. And unfortunately, I've had to say some of these things I'm going to have to do them myself. Even though I could afford to give a young person that opportunity to learn. So around that, it is my belief that any person has the right to work for another person on terms which they both agree to. And the state should not be able to impose minimum wage requirements. If a school leaver or graduate wishes to work for no pay in order to gain experience, which is, I did that. I have worked for no pay in order to gain experience. And it was probably one of the best decisions I did, because once I had gained that experience, guess what? I was a lot more appealing, a lot more employable to would-be employers. No person should be forced to join any union or any organization and pay contributions every month. No, you shouldn't be forced. You should be able to determine the right path for yourself, what works for you. Now, a key principle, the right to be secure on your own property and to defend yourself against intruders. Remember when I mentioned a father that is fighting to stay out of jail and maintain his freedom simply because he killed an intruder. Somebody that had come into his heart, into his yard. And now today he has to be that person that fights so dearly for his freedom. Now the old saying, a man's home is his castle. And that means women as well. Really. Comes from the castle doctrine, which says that if an intruder enters your property without permission, then you are entitled to use force to protect yourself and your family. So, why do we get in trouble for protecting our families inside our own homes? Another principle, just before the last two that I mentioned, free markets and international free trade based on enlightened self-interest. Economic exchange is voluntary. I've never heard of anybody being forced to, exchange and, being forced to enter into a trade they did not want to. So this whole idea around economic exchange It is a normal day-to-day activity that happens between individuals, between an individual and a business, and so forth. So honestly, the state should not tell people where to work, how to save, what to build, what to produce. Leaving things to free market rather than government planning or organization increases prosperity, reduces poverty, increases jobs, provides goods for people that want to buy. Our country's economic interests should not be compromised because of the state's political prejudices. If the best source for oil is Iran, or the best source for technology is Israel, such trade should be given preference. Yesterday, when I was preparing and I needed to be sure that I would not be misconstrued, a gentleman by the name of Gauss, I will not mention his full name, said on Facebook, my friends who have experience in military and have experience in security have been denied opportunity to be part of a group of people that have to go into another country, one of our neighboring countries, because they are white. But however, they are the most experienced individuals in the group. And I thought to myself, but well, isn't this counterproductive? Aren't we looking for experience? Shouldn't those people, and here's the strangest thing, they were volunteering. They were not even asking for pay. They were saying, we will use our own money to go and contribute our skills, our expertise, and our knowledge. And they were blatantly told that, listen, because you are of a different color, we have a preference for this color, we don't want your skills and knowledge. This was not a matter of a job. You understand? I would understand if it was a matter of, we are going to give you a salary that could go to a black person who has been previously disadvantaged and has had to fight for everything, and now they cannot get a job because they do not have the experience and so forth. This was an opportunity for us to can say, you guys have the knowledge, you guys have the expertise, and you are willing to give it to me for free at your own expense. So these are some of the things that really, one looks at and they stand out. And you say, but are we being progressive or are we being counter-progressive? Firearms, very contentious, I did say. Right? Firearms for self-defense. Look, before I even go into my script, really, I've worked very hard. I wanted to make sure that you know that I can sound very intelligent, and you've got an intelligent person that you're sending to parliament. But if I speak from the cuff, fact of the matter is, the people that are looking to harm me have firearms. More criminals have firearms in their possession. And it doesn't matter however way you look at it. But if every would-be criminal or criminal that is about to harm me knew that there is a very high possibility that I've got a firearm, they would have to rethink about approaching any individual to forcefully take whatever possessions that they may have. So, essentially, every citizen who is properly trained in the safe use of firearms has the right to acquire guns for self-defense. Unless criminally convicted or mentally unstable. Really, it doesn't need a rocket scientist. You know, we are riddled by crime. If it's not on the news, you read about it in the papers. So maybe, just maybe, this is a practical way of actually approaching this entire situation of crime in South Africa. Fraternity, and this is my last point really. Really, I put in so much work into this. I had to think long and hard. Spontaneous order and civil society. People, through voluntary interaction, create the rules by which people can live by. People do not need a state to do this. And the state should only play a role to resolve conflicts. Nobody invented our 11 official languages, guys. Nobody. Those arose because of people communicating with each other, and yet certain rules developed through that process. We believe that most social problems can be effectively dealt with through such voluntary organizations like the family, like religious institutions, like cultural organizations, like NGOs, because they have knowledge about the individuals they are dealing with or they are helping or serving. Government bureaucracies and inflexible rules can't change depending on people's individual circumstances. Civil society is much more effective and can do many things better than a welfare state. And with that last point, very, very important to me. When I started my organization and I left my job, and eventually after about a year or so of realizing that it's not making the millions I thought it was going to make, and certain individuals and leaders and experts were saying to me, you really should turn this thing into an NGO. I said, no. I am sick and tired of Africa always going to meet the rest of the world with a begging bowl in hand. I will not be a part of that. I know intelligent and brilliant young people that just need to be shown how to create value out of their talent. And this is one of the most important things to me. So I will repeat. Civil society is much more effective and can do many things better than a welfare state can ever imagine to. So yes, we have 10 people with 10 principles. And we asked ourselves, what are the 10 things that we can fix immediately when we get to Parliament? Make no mistake, we will be in Parliament. With your help and every South African's help. The only reason a South African will not vote for us and will not put us in Parliament is because they don't know about us. So I'm imploring anybody and everybody that is here to tell as many people as possible that there's a bunch of guys, that's how I look at it, it's a bunch of guys. They're not politicians. They don't come from a political background. They don't know anything about politics. But if there's one thing that they know very well, it's solving problems. Kevin?
Thank you, Neil. Thank you, Neil. So, what, I haven't even started yet. No. Maybe I'm terrible. Thank me. Oh, yeah. You're welcome. So, hello everyone, Ramon Kavanagh, co-host rather, of the Renegade Report. And I'm just going to go through the policies that we are looking at implementing in South Africa. We want three key things: simplicity, cheapness, effectiveness, or efficacy. My English is not that great. So, I did Woolworths Water. No, we can't drop names during our capitalist party. So anyway, so often things can be solved by simply amending laws that we have at the moment. We don't need to spend money to solve issues. Often the contrary works best. So, for example, we as South Africans care deeply about unemployment, crime, education, and corruption. And this is backed up by evidence. So you might notice that land reform and racism do not form part of our priorities, and we can talk about that on another day. The primary focus of our policies is to actually give people the rights they don't have, because we believe that South Africans can solve the issues that affect them if they have the correct tools at hand and have the ability and freedom to do so. So we chose our core policy objectives to focus on solutions to specific problems, in line with our slogan: innovation, disruption, no bullshit. Solving crime. Many people think, funding the police force can solve crime. That's perhaps one aspect of it. However, amending laws that de-incentivize criminals is a much better and cheaper way to solve crime. For example, if you treat drug users as addicts and patients rather than prisoners, you have solved crime because they're not committing a criminal act. They are sick, not in prison. There's good resources around the world for this. Portugal decriminalized all drugs in 2001. And lo and behold, when something is decriminalized, people stop doing it. So the use of heroin has dropped in Portugal. New HIV infection rate has dropped. Decriminalization has pulled resources away from police, away from prisons, and into health centers where people are treated for their addiction. As soon as people are treated, they get better, and if the people are better, their communities are better. That's how you solve drugs. Another way to solve violent crime that Neo has alluded to, of course, is to ensure that South Africans, and especially South African women, have the correct tools at their disposal to deter crime happening to them. Handling a firearm is a very valuable skill in South Africa. It's been demonized. People don't like it. Some in the state want to criminalize firearms, generally speaking, when we well know that it is probably our most effective tool to fight crime. So if women are taught to handle firearms and operate them competently at a young age, excuse me, that is what we call real empowerment. So fixing crime, simple. Decriminalize stuff that shouldn't be criminal and empower individuals to use the tools in their arsenal to prevent becoming a victim of crime. Simple, cheap, and effective. Employment. The problem with South Africa is we have many, many laws that actually prevent employment in certain sectors. So, for example, we mine for gold and diamonds, but citizens are not allowed to own gold and diamonds by themselves. We export gold and diamonds elsewhere, and then we buy whatever is made from it. That needs to change. South Africans should be able to own gold. They should be able to own diamonds. Gold is used to create jewelry, computers, satellite pieces. Diamonds are used to make drills, speakers. There are many potential jobs lost purely to existing regulation. Arbitrary laws that prevent wealth creation need to be repealed as soon as possible, and that is something that we will be fighting for. Another small example, tourism. Tourism is one of the fastest growing sectors in South Africa. It is bigger than agriculture, for example. However, we have these arbitrary visa laws that prevent people from coming here. So people from China, people from India prefer to go to Tanzania, prefer to go to Kenya, because it's much easier to go there. So a simple solution we propose is any visitor to South Africa who has a visa that's valid, a tourist visa available for the European Union and available for the US, that visa should and can be used to come to South Africa. We don't need to issue new visas to people like that. The EU and America have far more stringent requirements for visas than we do. So if you have a US visa or an EU visa, you're more than welcome to come here. Once again, simple, cheap, effective. Education. Ironically, we have one of the most expensive education systems in the world, but also the poorest one. In a matter of urgency, the fact that children are dying in pit toilets in 2019 is inexcusable and quite horrific. So we proposed shipping containers that already have ablution facilities within them to be shipped to every school in the country. They cost 1/10 of building a toilet building in each school. And these shipping containers can easily be transported everywhere overnight. Once again, simple, cheap, and effective. And you solve a real issue. No more kids dying in pit toilets. So in line with some of the best education systems in the world, adapting the school to the child makes a better educated child. And here's an example of that. If parents can choose where to send their kids to school and at what times, the child will learn better. And this has been proven in awful places like Denmark and Finland, places with the best education systems in the world, where you have 2 shifts in school, morning and afternoon. So early risers go in the morning, late sleepers go in the afternoon. You tailor the school experience to the individual child. You bring choice into education. In Denmark, for example, they have a voucher system where the best and brightest from the public schooling district go to private schools. So you have people who can't afford private education going to private education through a subsidized voucher. That can be implemented here. Cheap, simple, and effective. And lastly, a negative income tax. The goal here really is to treat people who are poor in the same way as we treat people who are rich. Negative income tax reduces all forms of state bureaucracy in welfare. A simple automated process can replace the entire welfare system. SARS has an algorithm that can determine how much you earn, if you pay over a tax threshold or not, and it can refund you immediately if you earn below a threshold and you get your dividend back in the form of negative income tax. It's important to reiterate that these policies are cheap, simple, and effective. Every one of them are available on our website, capitalistparty.org.za, in video form, in Afrikaans and Zulu. But, Kenton, back to you, sir.
Kind of took me unawares. You did the shortened version. As Roman said, people, check out capitalist.org.za. And for the Afrikaans and Zulu versions of our videos, they are available on purplecow.mobi, which is also where the English versions are available. Well, we're almost done. So let me just wrap up with a few points. We believe in the people of this country, and we believe that they are tired of manufactured outrage. All of us, irrespective of where we come from, we want to live comfortable lives, leaving our children better off than we were. It really is that simple. We believe that we are the only party that refuses to be held prisoner by the past and knows how to shape the future. We believe that there are enough people among our voters who share these beliefs. There are 7 million registered voters who were registered for the 2014 elections and simply did not go to the polls because there was no one who spoke to those beliefs and could get them to get out of bed in the morning and actually go and vote. To you, we say, take a leap of faith. Get out of bed on 8th of May, go to the polls, and put your cross next to the purple cow on the national ballot. When we get into Parliament, we will campaign relentlessly for the 10 plans that Ramon has outlined and to fight for the 10 principles that Neo has outlined. More to the point, we promise to give you feedback every single week right here on this YouTube channel as to exactly what progress we have made, what the stumbling blocks are, and how you can help us to overcome them. And if people on those portfolio committees are trying to push a particular agenda that is going to increase the price of delivery to us, we will let you know immediately. But before we do any of that, in the words of Steve Jobs, we have one more thing. In recognition of the fact that 34% of our taxes go to the public service wage bill, our first piece of legislation that we will table in Parliament will call for a 34% reduction in salaries across the board for all members of Parliament, all ministers, and the President, as a show of our resolve to cut government expenditure and rebuild our economy. We know the people of South Africa support us in this, and we call on all of the other parties to join us in this initiative. Thank you. We'll now take questions. If I could ask people who are present here who want to ask questions to please come up to the mic.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation, very refreshing. My question is, your 10 principles, how do they relate to the existing constitution of the country?
Well, the constitution of the country gives individual rights to every single South African. So arguably our principles are constitutional principles as well. There's been an issue in my opinion, in jurisprudence, where what the Constitution says and what people interpret it as saying are two separate things entirely. So, I mean, it's completely constitutional what we do. Our principles are completely constitutional. If you interpret the Constitution the way we do, there's no problem whatsoever.
Well, look, like Ramon has said, really, it boils down to interpretation. You know, the idea of the rights of the individual, just to make you an example, the right of the individual is more important than the right of the collective or of the group, which is one of our principles. It's nothing really new. It's actually in our constitution. So if you think about it, all we are merely doing is we are amplifying the message behind our constitution. Because indeed, yes, we do have what is touted as the best constitution in the world.
I think my colleagues have spoken to it by and large, but I think what we have seen for the longest time is that there has been a lot of smoke and mirrors around where we are supposed to be going as a country. And a lot of the conversation that has been happening in the country has been in the direction of taking us away from those hard-earned rights. So it's really been the boiling the frog principle. There's been a steady whittling away of the rights that we have that really were born out of these principles. And really what we're doing is we're focusing back on these things, and we're saying these things matter. And if you get these things right, then everything else falls into place. But as soon as you start trampling on these rights, things are going to break.
Further questions? Yeah. question from Twitter and the Facebook Live if you want.
So, and we knew this point would come up. It's less of a question than a comment, but the notion that voting for a smaller party will weaken the opposition and that you shouldn't split the vote. What's your response to that? So people are saying you shouldn't vote for a smaller party because it's going to split the vote and weaken the opposition.
Well, I'll just respond in this way. If you want another mute DA MP who sits in the back bench and does nothing, vote for the DA. If you want activist MPs who actually say something when required, vote for us. It is that simple.
I think one of the narratives that has been put out right now, particularly by the DA, is one that says that a vote for a smaller party is splitting the vote. And as I've reminded both Mmusi Maimane and Athol Trollip, that for a period of, I think it was something like 13 years, the ancestor of the DA, the Progressive Party, had only one MP, and that was Helen Suzman. And Helen Suzman relentlessly worked every single portfolio committee. She tabled more legislation as an individual than any other member of parliament across all political parties. And she was probably the single biggest voice in terms of making a difference to expose the plight of people who at that time were held on Robben Island. The ability to simply ask the relevant questions in parliament was such a powerful weapon that it completely exposed the corruption of the apartheid government that was there at the time. So people who are telling you that you're going to dilute the vote, no, actually it's not true. The way in which our proportional representation system is structured actually favors smaller parties. So if you look in terms of the last general election, there was an average of about 45,000 votes per seat. But the smallest party to get in, which had only one seat in parliament, was able to do so with 37,000 seats. Simply because of the fact that whenever there's a spillover in terms of the other parties that are not allocated, so for example, the ANC gets enough seats to, let's say, win 199 seats. Now that's wishful thinking. Let's say they get 230 seats. And they are, let's say, 30,000 short of a vote to get an additional seat. All of those votes then get distributed proportionately starting from the smallest parties. So the system actually favors smaller parties. So don't believe the hype, people on Twitter and everyone else. It's not true. There's a question right now that's coming up from the YouTube channel, and someone is raising the point that it would be expensive to integrate with sensitive foreign government systems to check visas. No, it's not true. There are many other countries that are currently making use of foreign visas, well, visas that are not of their country in order to allow people right of entry. So it happens in a lot of the European countries that are not part of the Schengen system. Look, it's in the interest of all of these governments, the US, the UK, and the EU, to be able to immediately flag if someone is using a fake visa. So they're very happy to allow access to their systems for people to be able to verify whether a visa is correct or not, and whether that is the person that should be carrying the visa. So again, don't look for problems where none exist. These problems have been solved, and we know how to fix them so that they actually work out here.
I think we have another question here from, if I'm not mistaken, somebody was asking if this party is on the ballot.
Yes, we are on the ballot. Absolutely, we are on the ballot. We actually registered the party, well, we gazetted the party in October of last year. Fortunately, the media in this country never really pays attention to what's going on in the government gazette. Otherwise, they would have known that the Capitalist Party was registered. And we then submitted our signatures in support of founding the party a few weeks ago. And on Wednesday, while the TV cameras were pointing at everyone else, we snuck in through the back door and paid our 200,000 Rand deposit. And yes, we will be on the ballot.
Do we have any more questions from the floor, or should we be looking at Twitter, Kenthan? What do you think?
I think while we're waiting for more from Twitter, we also have a couple of other party members who are present here, and I'd like to give them the opportunity to just come forward and very quickly say something. KG, could we start with you, please?
Yes, please.
Do you see the spirit of the party? You've got to fight very hard not to have privilege.
In fact, that's something else that, someone else has asked the question of us. So who's your party leader? We don't have a party leader. We've got 10 people who are going into parliament. We're never going to have a presidential candidate who's going to get it past the 50% mark. We all consider ourselves first among equals. You want to find out what our policy is on any particular thing? Ask any one of us. You want to get a quote? Ask any one of us. We don't have a spokesman.
Thank you. Dumelang, good morning. Middag, what is it? Is it middag yet? Okay, all of those. My name is Katlego Mabusela, Sawubona. All protocol observed. Now I sound like a real politician. But really quickly, first thing to say from my side, to introduce myself, and in saying that, it's just where I come from, it's my family creed. It's worth sharing with people just so that we've got that point of relation. I'm not a politician, never have been, have no aspirations of being a politician, but I'm a proud South African. What that means is that I love my country and I love everybody who lives in it. And I know that it takes work. And for the longest time, like most South Africans, I've been sitting and being, what do they call it? A bench coach. I've just kind of been pointing fingers and saying, this could be better, this could be better, this could be better. And I was focusing on my own personal interests, which is building my businesses and sort of doing my bit to add value in that respect. And at some point I thought, and it's after Kanthan had reached out, to be honest with you, I was challenged to actually do something. And what that thing was very difficult for me because it asked the question, are you willing to go into politics? And like I said, when I started, I'm not a politician. But when we had a chance to talk about what the party is going to be about and what the issues we're going to be dealing with are, I thought maybe there's an opportunity for me to do some real work here. And I think in many ways I'm echoing what Noah had said earlier. And if there is anything that I would say is, I'm looking forward to doing real work. And if you are sitting at home watching on YouTube or sitting in the office, I don't know why you'd be at the office on a Sunday, but good on you. And to those that will read this in the papers later, or whenever it is that it will come out in the papers, if you're looking for a party that isn't an anti-party, a party that has people who are bringing and leveraging their experience from their respective fields to do some real work, a party that isn't full of politicians, but is full of people with expertise in very specific areas, then the choice is up to you. I was saying to some friends of mine yesterday when I was declaring to them that I had made this decision, I was like, gents, I'm not going to campaign for your vote. I'm not here to campaign for your vote. The party's not here to campaign for your vote. Judge us on merit. Because ultimately we can talk, we can stand here and say really nice speeches, we can do really cool stuff, but ultimately we have to present real solutions because that's what our country needs. And I hope that that's what we're going to be achieving. I'm looking forward to that journey. And as the young kids say, you must call us out when we're not doing it. Call us out. Because ultimately it is your vote and it is worth you saying, look, I'm not happy with the work that you're doing. Duncan?
Okay, hi YouTube, hi everyone. My name is Dumo Denga, and yeah, I'm really proud to be here. I remember the one time I was watching a Thomas Sowell interview, and they asked him, why didn't you campaign to be president? Because this guy had such great ideas on vouchers and so forth, and ideas that were beneficial for people. And he said, well, I've got these great ideas, but being a politician is a skill. It's something that requires some heavy specialization. So that's why he didn't go. But I realized that, what's been happening, in recent months, the push and the drive towards less freedoms, bigger government assistance and so forth, it's not really helping individuals. So I really felt that, I need to do something. I can't be, posting statuses on Facebook on why we shouldn't do certain things. I need to actually get into it and actually assist this country in becoming a far better one. So yes, I'm really looking forward to this journey, and I'm really excited, and I hope you guys too as well. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. My name is Duncan McLeod. I wasn't expecting to be saying anything today, so I haven't prepared anything, but I'll just be very brief. Yes, I think that the payoff line of this for this party says it all. Politics is too important to be left to politicians. We're ordinary South Africans who want to make a real difference in this country, and if you believe in free markets, if you believe in individual liberty, if you believe that the government should get out of the economy, quite frankly, and let people trade and participate freely and trade amongst one another, then the Capitalist Party of South Africa is the party you should be voting for. Thank you.
Do we have any questions, any further questions? Well, thank you all for turning out, and thank you to everyone who's actually tuned into our live stream and stayed with us for the duration. And I'm very pleased that the technology actually lived up to its promise, thanks to going wireless. Yes.
And then just one last thing. This YouTube channel will be our primary means of communicating with you. We're not going to buses and doing town hall meetings and things like that. We're a modern party for a modern audience. So keep in touch through the YouTube channel. We'll be doing live streams very often. And you can ask us anything you want. We're very transparent, always will be. And we're going to start that right now. So thank you for tuning in. And you'll see a lot more of us in the upcoming weeks. Cheers.